Here to discuss. I'm joined by IWF Policy Director Hadley Heath Manning. And I can tell you right now, after this gets out, Plume's population may swell. This is really remarkable because we always kind of affix a number to where we want to get to retire, but people aren't thinking about where they may have to spend that money.
Oh, certainly. I mean, if you're rootless, if you have the ability to move, then you're going to think about cost of living. You're going to think about the safety of the city. And those are the two factors that this report focused on. I was happy to see my birthplace, Midland, Texas, there, where you can live for about 23 years on $1 million in retirement savings. Might be a good place for me to die as well. But people are considering other factors, too, Charles. Of course, they're considering tax law, varies from state to state. And they're going to consider quality of life. And my number one consideration, I recommend seniors think about where your grandchildren are and move there, because I think there's a lot of good data that suggests that people are happy when they spend time with their families, especially those little kiddos.
You know, I've got 5 grandkids, so you just touched me, and I will see all of them in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Wonderful.
What about, though, living in communities, though? You know, like we see the villages, it grew so large, it has its own zip code now. Living in these sort of communities, is that something that people should consider? I mean, we know the economics are critical, but these other exogenous aspects of it.
Oh, I mean, I think living in community is going to be beneficial to people at every age of life, and that's something that I think, you know, there's been a big public debate about how that's missing from our lives as Americans. We've seen the sort of unfortunate disintegration of a lot of community life and civic institutions. But when you're nearing retirement, this can also be an affordable option for seniors if they move into a retirement community, maybe with a lot of people talk about downsizing. So certainly there's savings there, and that's important, Charles, because the number of Americans who have actually saved up $1 million before retirement is very small. We sort of look at the retirement savings of older U.S. adults over age 56, and it's a bimodal thing. So that means there's some people at the top who've saved a lot. There's a lot of people who have saved very little. In fact, the median savings is about $17,000, if you can believe that.
Wow.
People can live, you know, maybe a year or two, even if in the most affordable of cities on a thrifty budget.
I don't know what kind of partying they're doing in Saratoga, California, but that 17 grand might get you one day's worth. Hey, I do want to turn to another topic. A good man, really hard to find. I mean, according to the Department of Education, more than half of college graduates are women now. The gap is getting even larger when you talk about master's degree. Also, the Wall Street Journal pointing out more educated women are competing for fewer eligible men. What's this going to mean? I mean, listen, you know, it's a tough one because I get the feedback, hey, you know, what's wrong with someone who's not a college graduate? But in relationships, how important is it, and what are the economic consequences?
Oh, you know, I think this is a complex topic. We're not just talking about societal expectations or the perceptions that men and women have when it comes to a mate. This is really ultimately, Charles, in my view, it comes down to a lot of those family responsibilities that men and women share when they have children. People talk often about the two-income trap, and that's what happens when a family becomes very dependent on mom's salary. And, of course, as women reach higher levels of educational attainment, that means they're bringing home more bacon. Well, that bacon is harder to forgo when mom decides maybe she wants to go part-time or step out of the workforce when the family has young children. So I don't think that this really boils down to sexism or our preference in mate, but in a lot of times it comes down to our preferences as working parents. And surveys suggest that it's women who want to do some of that, you know, stepping out or leaning out, I guess I could say, and it's the opposite of leaning in.
I hear you. And, of course, there is a jealousy aspect that's been mentioned in several reports. It happens around a 40–50% threshold when a wife makes more than her husband. But that's all the time we have for now, Hadley. And Midland, Texas, I'll keep that in mind as well. We love Texas, so we might end up down there as well. Thanks. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Charles. You